Hello lovely viewers, you are most welcome to our channel Poetry Online. In this video, we shall be discussing the major themes of the book The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born by kwei armah. Kindly subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to get updates on all our new videos. Once again, let us assure you of a very interesting discussion. Get ready for this lesson. The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born is a novel written by kwei armah. The novel delves deeper into the issue of corruption and how politics is used as an instrument for playing tricks on electorate. Throughout the novel, it is clear from all indication that corruption has eaten deep into the moral fiber of the Ghanaian society, as the novelist literally makes readers to see, hear, smell, feel, and even taste corruption in all aspects of the life of the characters. In the quest to amass wealth and fortune, most people venture into politics, and in the long run, they gamble with the dreams and aspirations of the electorate. Let's now consider the major themes in the novel The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born by kwei armah. Widespread corruption in newly independent African countries. kwei armah makes a stand against corruption and brings attention to the fact that people did not care about the way they gained their money. Hence, the novel depicts a category of people that have converted all ethics to meet its desires. These people's love for money justified all the wrong they did. The bus conductor, for instance, did not feel guilty as he handed people short change. Instead, he enjoyed the smell of the rottenness that came from the money he did not deserve. kwei armah employs vulgar and repulsive images of filth and rot to foreshadow the illness of the society. Because of this pervasive corruption, bribery and inducement became national games. The timber merchant who offered the man a bribe to book him a wagon was not able to understand why the man refused to take the bribe, and he tried to offer the man more money. In the same way, the man was not able to see the logic in the merchant's behavior and could not understand why he was offering a bribe for a customary procedure. The man's colleague, who won the lottery, hoped that the organizers would take some of his prize and leave the rest to him. This is because he knew this is how things work in Ghana. Policemen also had their fair share of briberies. Whenever they had the chance, they used the privilege of the law to extort money from bus drivers. On many occasions, the man heard policemen repeat their famous statement, which left the drivers no choice but to pay for their passage. They always say, even cola nut can say thanks. Bribery was becoming a national game. Everyone wanted to play, and only two types of men who took refuge in honesty, thus the coward and the fools. In the society depicted in the novel, only the cowards and the fools do not participate in bribery and corruption. In Ghana, bribery is regarded as a act of heroism, a sacrifice every man should take for the sake of his loved ones or the family. Honest men were exiled and blamed for the poverty and misery of their loved ones. Teacher, for example, escaped his family because he knew he was nothing and will never be anything to them. He could never give his family members the life they desired, and consequently, they would never accept his character and let him be at peace with his life preferences. To escape the decay in a society, Teacher chose to free himself from the obligations towards the loved ones and isolate himself from them. Teacher broke all the ties with the outside world. He neither cared about the life escaping him, nor concerned himself with people's judgment as they sought him from the window. Like most government officials in Ghana, Kumsin too used his position and connection to close illegal bargains. He purchased fishing boats under borrowed names like the man's wife Oyo and her mother, and arranged a scholarship for her sister-in-law to study in London. He says, everything is possible. It depends on the person. Even simple things like buying imported goods or fine liquor requires the acquaintance of people who know how to smuggle it to the country. Things get done all the time, and if you know people who can do these things, there is nothing wrong in that. Nepotism and bribery are just manifestations of a corrupt Ghana. they are depicted as reasons behind the poverty of African countries. The beautiful ones are not yet born transmits a sense of bitterness due to the extreme spread of corruption and bribery, which are universally accepted in Ghana as the only way to prosperity and development. This novel discusses the harsh and cruel images of corruption, self interest, and hypocrisy in Ghana and reflects on the people after independence who believed that the only way to gain power and wealth was to be a liar, a thief, and a selfish person, caring only for his personal interest. Throughout the novel, it is clearly shown that corruption existed heavily in the society. Ayikwe used his novel, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, to show his unpleasantness and disagreement toward the political and social standards of Ghana during the post-colonial era. His rejection of the current values is seen in the protagonist's character that appears to struggle in the preserve of his clean soul in the middle of a dirty environment filled with rot and disgust. Ayikwe Ama has clearly stated that the African continent is drowned in corruption and in the carelessness of both its leaders and people. The phenomenon of corruption is considered as a need for prosperity and development. Moreover, the man resists his wife's insistence for accepting bribery and pushes him to imitate his fellow Kumsin in offering his wife and children a prosperous life through engaging himself in corrupt activities. Hence, corruption is found everywhere in Africa, as it is illustrated in this novel. The beautiful ones are not yet born, and those who are in better positions are the ones engaged in it the most. For example, presidents, ministers, and other political figures are people who engage in it the most. That is, the people who rule the country, even after the country gained independence, were more like the colonialists. Corruption never ceased to exist. It accumulated more than before, and those flourishing ideas for better society after colonization has disappeared and vanished. Thus, none of the wishes Africans dreamed about came true. Political corruption and failed development is due to the African leaders misgoverning all over the African countries. Also, it caused great disappointment of the newly appointed government officials who have great material manifestation. Kumsin, who changed suddenly from a low-class worker to a leader in the country, represent those politicians who profit the maximum from the government's money. Kumsin is a depiction of the rot of the day's government, so Ayikwe Ama is showing that post-colonial leaders have failed in developing their countries. The theme of disillusionment or disappointment. After political independence in Ghana, a totally unexpected state of extreme disappointment and despair appeared, all of which was mainly due to the new unsatisfying economic, social, moral, and political circumstances that surprisingly took place after independence. The new set of African leaders, who were a recreation of the former colonialists with all their Western values and perspective, held power. The only thing the new leaders cared about was their own selfish interests and desires at the expense of the masses, stirred with corruption and dishonesty, just like white colonialists before them. Consequently, Africans were still living in endless misery. Thus, freedom was not a clear fact. The European countries continued their colonization of the African continent through indirect means, at least politically, through globalization, humanitarian aid, and its own corrupt politicians that were left behind. Africans became even more disillusioned after the so-called independence did not bring the much-needed comforts, liberty, freedom, and development that was expected. The unprecedented political, economic, and social chaos entrapped Africans in the corrupt governments that were controlled by tyrants, thus a political elite with materialistic spirit. In this masterpiece, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, the Ghanaian writer Ayikwe Ama harshly criticized the wrong political path taken by African leaders after political independence. The very people the Africans were fighting to free themselves from their bondage of colonialism and captivity, Thus, the Europeans, in a sense, did better than the newly elected African leaders with their serious, greedy, selfish, and dangerous materialistic spirits. Using a very vulgar language, Ayikwe Ama depicted to what extent Africans seem to convert to materialism, forgetting all about their culture and their identity. Ayikwe Ama's book, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, showed the real economic, social, and political circumstances that Africa in general, and Ghana in particular, went through, emphasizing the psychological status that resulted from that. The story is about an outcast protagonist who remains nameless throughout the narrative and is only referred to as the man. The narrative is divided into 15 chapters, which project the tedious and tiresome routine of the man's life from home to his workplace at the railway administration. Through the novel, Ayikwe Ama employs extremely vulgar language that stresses images of filth and rottenness to show the ethical devolution that Ghana has reached during the aftermath of political independence. The man's struggle to keep himself decent against the temptation of inducement of briberies in his work and to live with his wife and mother-in-law's constant nagging. Though he is convinced of his honesty and remains loyal to his values, he cannot prevent himself from feeling guilty and responsible for the poverty of his family. Seeking to find company, the man often pays visits to another nameless character who is referred to as Teacher. Teacher is a man who shares the protagonist's view about corruption and materialism. However, unlike the man, Teacher chooses to escape this bitter reality by isolating himself from the society. The events take a faster pace when the government is overthrown by a military coup d'etat. Kumsen, who was involved with the corrupted system, rushes to the man to help him escape by water. The act gives the man some relief as his wife shows him respect for the first time. However, the novel closes with a gloomy scene when the man sees a bus driver offer a police officer a bribe and he confirms that nothing has changed. The theme of hypocrisy and insincerity of political leaders. The novel raises serious issues about the lifestyle of African elites and bourgeoisies who assumed power after the majority of African countries became independent. The people had high hopes in their new leaders, but they were disappointed as these new leaders were caught up in the same lifestyle of the colonial masters. Ayikwe Ama highlights the hypocrisy of the elites in their attempt to portray themselves as the real nation builders, when in the real sense they are the nation wreckers. The novel is about the tragedy of the African countries when they got the opportunity to rule themselves. Many countries after independence have been struggling to deal with the myriad of problems such as corruption, poverty, and mismanagement. African leaders that took over power aped their colonial masters by plundering and feeding fast on the resources of the African continent. This novel, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, reveals the hypocrisy of many African leaders who always play on the intelligence of the masses and electorates, pontificating that they are only doing their best to change the fortunes of the country. The vivid description of the minister Kumsen and his flamboyant lifestyle foregrounds the hypocrisy of the elites. The frustration of morally upright people. The man struggles to keep himself decent against the temptations of inducement and briberies in his work, and to live with his wife and mother-in-law who are constantly nagging. Though he is convinced with his honesty and remains loyal to his values, he cannot prevent himself from feeling guilty and responsible for the poverty of his family. Seeking to find company, the man pays visit to another nameless character who is referred to as a teacher. Teacher is a man who shares in the protagonist's view about corruption and materialism. However, unlike the man, Teacher chooses to escape this bitter reality by isolating himself in a society. The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born demonstrate the Ghanaian people's despair and anguish during the Kwame Nkrumah's regime and the post-independence circumstances. The novel chronicles the life of a maverick character, the man, through his daily routines and presents a meticulous depiction of the physical surroundings as well as people's mindsets. The book The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born opens with a man's usual bus ride to his workplace at the Railway and Harbour Administration, describing the corrosion of the bus and the burdened passengers. As the novel develops, it exposes the extensive images of rottenness and decomposition of the surrounding and unfolds the corruption eroding Ghana. Ayikwe Ama used his novel, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, to portray the fact that, in a society where there are numerous people engaged in corrupt practices, those who have kept their moral values are disappointed as a result of those corrupt people. The man, a morally upright railway worker, becomes frustrated as a result of the pressure from his wife and her mother to be corrupt like others, particularly using his office for his benefit. However, he never accepted or achieved their desire. Kumsin, the politician, was a classmate of the man while in school, but Kumsin became rich due to his corruptive activities as a politician. The man, at a point in the novel, while discussing with a teacher, another morally upright person in the novel, said, "I am asking myself, what is wrong with me? Do I have some part missing? Teacher, this Kumsin was my own classmate, my mate, so tell me, what is wrong with me?" This quotation indicates that the man is fully frustrated due to the mess that existed all over the society which he denied to be part of. The man stayed aloof from illegal activities made by his fellow workers. The frustration stems from the fact that those who kept their morals and ethics intact are despised by others. They were considered the cowards or the men who didn't want a better future for their families. The man questions himself whether he has taken a wrong decision or a right one. The man in the novel epitomizes every ordinary person in Africa who feels frustrated by his surrounding, and a country or a continent that praise corrupt people and rather mock their upright people. Misuse of state resources. Ayikwe Ama reveals to his readers the social life of Ghanaians, whereby government leaders like Kumsin, Zakaria Lagos, and Abednego Yamua, who enjoy lavish life surrounded by expensive possession. All of this are mainly due to their embezzling of the country's funds. The abuse of leadership is mainly observed in Kumsin's character and his government, even from people of the law, positions in life like the conductor, boatsman, watchman, clerk, and drivers. Again, Kumsin is one of the basic characters who started as a railway worker. Then, engaging himself in corrupt practices, he became a minister in the government. Thus, he is tempted with the fruits of the office. The man knows that Kumsin is successful as a result of public theft. It is meant that power is his salvation. Kumsin steals the money that belongs to the state coffers and abuses the trust that public places on his responsibility. He and his wife enjoy luxurious life and are able to buy expensive things such as houses, cars, and furniture, and also their daughter is well dressed and behaves like a British in the way she walks, talks, and eats. Furthermore, Kumsin embezzling the government funds is pictured in his physical appearance. He represents a neo-colonial leader who are fattened by the fruits of the betrayal of their own people. The man ironically says about him and their lives. The man says, "These were the socialists of Africa, fat, perfumed, soft with ancestral softness of chiefs who sold their people and are celestially happy with the fruits of their trade. To be successful in Ghana, one needs to be a thief and corrupt, since what Kumsin has cannot be acquired from a salary. He is preoccupied with gathering money. He lives a prosperous life at the expense of other fellow workers. For instance, he uses the fishing boat plot to deceive Oyo, the man's wife, and her mother, since he promised them that he is going to ride the boat under their names, yet the boat belongs to his daughter Princess. Ayikwe Ama stated that, "How long will Africa be cursed with its own leaders?" Ayikwe Ama simply feels sorry for Africa, since it is being destroyed by its own people. They are caring only about their selfish interests and benefits. The theme of marginalization and alienation. The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born by armah captures the false promises of rulers who were only a mimesis of the old white masters they rebelled against. armah further explained that the sons of the nation felt love and admiration for the colonizer. He says, what they felt for their white master and our white masters was gratitude and faith. Kumsin, for instance, was brought up in a modest family. In his youth, he believed in building the nation and reforming the system. However, once he held power, he disclaimed his conviction and became eager to take the luxury of European goods. Kumsin, the minister, wears expensive suits and speaks with the superiority and arrogance of English bourgeois. He and his wife Estella enjoyed an extravagant lifestyle in the upper residential area, along with other wannabe whites. Kumsin's new motto was, "Money is not the difficult thing. The commercial bank is ours, and we can do anything." As a result, he drained the public funds to finance his lavish parties, pay for the fancy cars and houses, and travel around the world. Kumsin is unable to see the difference between his own actions and the former colonizers' actions. Thus, the sole difference he sees lies in the color of their skin. The novel shows Estella's addiction to the white man's lifestyle and how it affects her behavior. Estella believes that she is a high-born woman who ought to be admired and feared. She often patronizes people and has no respect for commoners. Acting on this basis, Estella strutted in her imported silk gown, covering her curly dark hair with freshly straightened wigs, which were supposed to look like European women's hair. On the dinner the man hosted in his house, Estella made no efforts to hide her snobbery. Contrariwise, she confirmed her superiority by refusing to drink the local beer the man and Oyo offered to her. The high voice of his wife cut the air into pieces. This local beer, she was saying, does not agree with her constitution. The Kumsin's fondness for European culture was also apparent in the way they decorated their house with marbles and carefully polished woods brought from foreign countries. They filled the house with latest inventions like the television set, the radio, and the recorder. The Kumsins surrounded themselves with servants, and even the way they spoke was filled with white arrogance. The minister Kumsin, for instance, had trouble pronouncing African names, as if he had never heard such names before. He called out. It was a peculiar kind of shout, the kind made by white men. The man recalls with both sarcasm and pity a walk he once took and came across a group of Ghanaians in the company of other white men. The Ghanaians tried to hide the darkness of their skin with the whiteness of their uniforms. Disguised in white, one of them sounded so ridiculous and desperate, as the man described. He was trying to speak like a white man, and the sound that came out of his mouth reminded the listener of a constipated man straining in his first minute on top of the lavatory seat. The protagonist never anticipated any change from the new leaders. He only thought of them as old buffoons, eager to fill their big bellies with whatever they could grab from the people's money. They were trained apes who only responded to the white man's voices. Armah's gloomy vision persists along the whole novel, and a cynical thought reverberates through his character's skeptic attitude and the hopelessness they feel. The man conveys his disappointment with the independence by calling the aftermath of the coup d'etat or the war. He speaks in sorrow and frustration of the leaders they believed in and paid their blood to bring them to rule. After the freedom's joy had ended, people realized that all their work and sacrifice to exterminate white control over Ghana was worthless. The new leaders would not bring any change to the country, for they were only puppets in the hands of the white masters. Thanks for watching this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video.